Welcome back to the Postpartum Plan podcast. This podcast is designed to support and empower you through postpartum. Whether you're expecting, in the early postpartum days, or beyond, this space is for you. I'm your host, Madison Fugere, a dedicated postpartum doula and pediatric sleep consultant, striving to help parents feel confident and supported in their parenting journey. Each week, I'm sharing practical tips and expert advice to help you navigate all the postpartum things with confidence. Well, as much confidence as you can. Let's embark on this journey together, making your parenthood as serene and supportive as possible. Natalie is a certified sleep consultant through the Center for Pediatric Sleep Management and is a member of the International Pediatric Sleep Association. As founder of Sound Sleepers by Natalie Fay, Natalie works with a diverse array of families to cultivate healthy sleep habits for their children and households as a whole. Hi, Natalie. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm super excited for today's episode, not only because we're talking about sleep shaping and newborns, which is something I'm asked about like all of the time, but it's also because you and I are like business besties. So like we have some of the best like random conversations. So I'm just excited to see where it takes us.
Well, thank you for having me. It is really exciting to be here for that reason, because I feel like we can just blend those two so well. Like we can talk about business, we can talk about the field, but we also are friends. So it kind of just gives us a little oomph, I think, which is great.
Yeah. And like listeners, as I'm sure you can tell, my voice is totally shot. Allergies are horrible here in Massachusetts. If you're with me, you know. And so, I also don't edit things. I was like debating if I postponed our thing, and I was like, oh no, because honestly, I never edit things, and like the real and raw is how I do it. And so it'll almost be like they're listening in on just one of our like little powwows that we have sometimes.
I think that's good. I mean, that's kind of like, that's the vibe I want to go for. So yeah. I'm here for it.
Right, exactly. So I guess we should start out by, do you want to just tell everybody about you, like what you do for a living, how you got into sleep consulting, and then ultimately like co-founding 9 In, 9 Out too?
Yeah. So, my name's Natalie, and I live in Wisconsin. I live in Madison. I don't know if you're familiar, that's the home of the Badgers, a Big Ten school. So I went to school here, and I was originally in school to become a school psychologist, but it just ended up not being the right fit for me. So ever since then, I was just doing a little bit of career hopping, soul searching. And while I was in college, I was a nanny just kind of to make extra money. And then I actually also got working in sales. So it was kind of like this weird mix of just by experience, I was kind of led to sleep consulting and kind of being my own boss, because I loved working in sales. I loved business, but I kind of was like, I felt like my soul was sucked out of me. Like it was just soulless work. It wasn't anything I was passionate about. And what I was really passionate about is families and babies and helping people. And I'd had a lot of experience, like firsthand, hands-on experience that I felt like was valuable. So I enrolled in the Center for Pediatric Sleep Management and became certified and launched my own business in early 2021. So I serve clients virtually right now. And I hope to do in person too, eventually. But virtually is great because I can reach people wherever they are. And then just through that, I also just in the last few months here, have started another venture, a joint venture, with another postpartum professional here in Madison who, just shows you the power of networking and social media. She found me, online, and we got a coffee and we got talking about how there are so many resources for new parents and families, and so many like independent professionals like doulas, massage therapists, and like all these resources out there, but people still struggle. Like all of our clients are always like, I wish I could have found you earlier. Like, where were you for my first kid or whatever?
Literally.
And it's like, right. And so it's like, man, it's like a broken record. Like, what can we do? So we were like, let's do something where we can bring all these people together and create like a a community event, like an expo, instead of being like about like high chairs and the best bottle to buy, which is important, but also like just as important, or if I'd like to argue, if not more important, are the things you can line up for your support after you bring home a baby. So that's where 9 in, 9 out is born. So kind of like 9 in, so pregnancy, and then 9 out, like approximately the first year. So we've targeted professionals that serve that community, and we hosted our first event in April. It was a wild success, and we're hoping to do it. We are going to do it again in Madison, but we're hoping to eventually move it throughout the country too.
You can
So
come up to Boston next, because I was
we
so
would
sad.
love
I
it.
wanted to. Hey, listen, I got all the networks. No, and it is so amazing. And I feel like it's so funny because as you were talking about, there's all these things that you can line up. I legitimately was texting with somebody. I don't even remember who it was. Someone was going to be listening and being like, "Oh my God, it was me you were talking to." But I was talking to someone literally the other day about like, no, like for your baby shower, like you don't need to ask for, all of these things, especially because it's your second child. Like, why not register for house cleaning services or postpartum support
Yeah.
or sleep support? Like, those are
Yes.
great things, and people are going to be helping you rather than just giving you more baby clothes that like they may or may not wear because they're probably going to be in footies for like a whole 5 months.
Right. I know. Yeah. And it's not to say like that stuff can be fun, but it's also like already over marketed and just like shot at people throughout their whole pregnancy. Like you don't need to be sucked into any more of that marketing. You know that that's out there. What really needs to happen, I think, is like a shift in how we think about that and think
Yeah.
about like the postpartum period and like how instead of just being like, well, I just won't, I'm not going to sleep for a year. Like, no, that's not how it
Right.
has to be.
That's not
So,
how it has to be. Yeah.
yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
idea with, this whole podcast and the idea behind the workbook too that I have. It's like, postpartum, you can line things up and prepare for things. Like, although it's a very like unpreparable time because you don't know what's going to happen, you can also line things up that aren't related to you or to baby and just your life and in general, and people can come and help and not just sit and hold the baby, just like how people can give
Yes.
you services and not just random stuff that you're going to end up with way too much of.
Right, right. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. And I'm, I was taking what I love about being a sleep consultant is you can kind of choose your own schedule. So I was taking as clients as I could, focusing on that. And now I'm kind of ramping back up clients now that we're kind of in like an off season for the expo. But yeah, that's where all my energy is these days.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So
Yeah.
now that we're kind of talking more sleep related things now, I'm
Yeah.
super excited to kind of discuss together the topic that honestly comes up so much, which is really sleep shaping, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody really knows what sleep shaping is and what sleep training is, and when can you sleep train your baby is like the first question I get. I'm constantly using sleep shaping skills and explaining the difference between the two to postpartum clients. And so when we
Yes.
were kind of brainstorming, out of all of these sleep topics that we could talk about, what are we picking, right? Because we could do like a 17-hour long podcast.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So to like hone in on one topic, and you were like, I think I want to do something sleep shaping related and like flexibility, because you were saying how the family that you nanny for were talking about like flexibility, and it kind of came to your mind, and it's been something that you've been working on recently. And so I was like, I think that that's
Yes.
perfect, right? Because not only do I hear, when can I start sleep training? What's the difference between sleep training and sleep shaping? But I also hear, okay, now that my child slept trained, like what happens if we go on vacation? What happens if they get sick? Can I snuggle them extra? What if they fall asleep in the stroller? Like all of these things that come up that are, not how you went about the method of sleep training. And so now it's scary because that's not the
Yeah.
normal. So like how do we find flexibility in that, right?
Right.
So I'm assuming that these things come up in your life, and you were telling me about how it was happening, with the family that you were nannying. Do you want to like share kind of how that came to
Yeah.
your mind?
Yeah, so like you said, and like everybody knows, like everybody's different, right? And there is really no, besides like keeping a baby safe and making sure that they're being fed appropriately and medically that they're all checked, everything's in the clear. There is no one way that you can raise that you're supposed to raise a child. Like there's so many opinions out there, but truly at the end of the day, as long as you have your child's best interest at heart, you're doing the best job, right?
Right.
So you have to just find what works and feels good for you. So yes, like it's great that there's so much knowledge and there's so many people out there that you can pull from to kind of help guide you. And that's a lot of what what we do as sleep consultants is really just meet people where they are and just learn about them and think of what we could do to support them in the style that feels best for them, right? So that's why, like, you could get yourself really, wound up with reading and finding all these methods and then really beat yourself up for not following them exactly. And that's just not the attitude that I find is most successful. And, that just creates more anxiety.
Right.
And instead of being helpful can actually be hurtful. So
Yeah,
it's,
for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So I guess like there's the family that I have been working with as their nanny they're both professionally, the parents are both physicians. So they're very like medical minded, very sciencey. They like things to be super logical. So for them it really works to have like something written down on paper like hour by hour because they want to be able to look to something and follow it. And like for the most part that's okay. But
Right.
kids aren't robots, right? Like you can't just have that be cookie cutter every single day. So recently with their 3-year-old, we were running into some issues because he's 3 and he is becoming his own person and he's pushing back and developing his will and also is needing some more space like before bedtime, like his bedtime was too early, so we really needed to start pushing it back, but he like didn't really know what to do with himself during that time.
Right.
And the parents were just kind of a little bit thrown off because they're like, well, this is what was working before and now like what do we do? And the answer is just kind of tuning into the child and being
Yeah.
flexible with what he needs. And to me, his behavior was asking for a shift in his whole routine. But that's a gradual shift. So you'd have to just really like, if you were to read all the books and try to focus in on exactly like how can we switch his schedule by exactly an hour, that's you're going to make yourself insane. You just have
Right.
to like just zone in on what does your child need and then surround yourself with support to get there.
Right. And you need to tap in is like such a big part of it, right? Like I would say if you are listening and you're going to hire a sleep consultant, if you're going to hire me, if you're going to hire Natalie, if you're going to hire Joe Schmo on the side of the road, whoever it is, like just to remember and make sure that whoever you're hiring is not, and you never should be tuning your kid out during sleep training. If anything, you're tuning in, right? And that's the whole thing with
Right.
parenting as a whole, I think. But, I think that
Yeah.
it's a big part of sleep training because there's this stigma, which you can go back and listen to in my episode with Jane on episode 8. But I talked a lot with her about, this sleep training stigma and how it's this idea that you're just letting your kid cry. But in fact, you should be tuning in and listening to why they're crying or what they're
Right.
saying in their cries. And you need to be able to tune in to help them find the proper amount of flexibility. Like, however you
Yeah.
sleep train your kid now may not be what works later down the road because they're going to go from a crib to a bed. Or, because you're going to be doing things with them now, like you said, bedtime might be switching. We might be dropping a nap. Like, there's gonna
Mm-hmm.
have to be change, and with change comes flexibility, and you have to be okay with that, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's really, really not fun coming from a type A person. I would agree.
Right. And I think a lot of the value of hiring a sleep consultant or any type of coach is having that third party outside person who has all the background knowledge, who can hold you accountable, kind of tell you something that you may not want to hear, but kind of helps you to get into the progress mode instead of like perseverating on what's going wrong.
Right.
And holding your hand as you address some behavior that can be challenging to address in a child,
Right.
and just kind of reassuring you that this is all normal, it's part of development, it's part of change, and you can work with it in a way that will bring progress to your child and to you and have different ways to think about it.
Right. So I mean, I think that the most change and the most flexibility in an age bracket that you're ever going to see is when we talk about newborns, right? I mean, newborns
Right.
are constantly evolving from like day to day. I mean, every kid is changing day to day, but when it comes to newborns, these milestones are happening quickly and consistently for the first 3 months. And I mean,
Yes.
even past that, but especially the first 3 months or so. And so when families come to me and they're like, when can I start really sleep training? The first thing I always say is, the circadian rhythm doesn't click in, which is that 24-hour clock, until they're about 3 months old. However, as a postpartum doula, I'm establishing these, what we call sleep shaping cornerstones prior to that, right? And so I think that making sure you have that flexibility again in those moments, during this postpartum period, there feels like there's no schedule, right? We're such beings of routine and schedule that bringing a baby
Yep.
home is so overwhelming because you don't know how to handle it. Like, when do I know I have to feed them every 3 hours, but they have to be awake for 30 minutes and then they have to sleep. But what if they don't want to sleep? And what if they wake up early? Then do I feed
Right.
them? Like, it's a constant loop. You're constantly doing numbers in your head to figure out when you need to wake them and when they need to eat and when they need to do that. So you have to be flexible. But with
Yes.
that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't start establishing healthy sleep habits and sleep shaping, from the start. So would you like
Yes.
share kind of how you explain to people the difference between like sleep shaping versus like actual sleep training?
Yes, absolutely. That and I everything you just said is so common. Like, that's just really the sentiment of a new parent, like in general, right? And it's natural for you to want to be like, what can I be doing now to set them up for when they are 3 months old, when you can actively sleep train. But people are like, okay, that's great, but what can I be doing now? Right.
Right.
And there are things that you can be doing. And I guess for me, what I like to do with people is really try to, first of all, instill right from the start, because it will help them when their kid is 3 and pushing bedtime, starting right away at the newborn phase, is just really stressing how being flexible is important. I always say a flexible routine, not a rigid schedule. So we can establish a schedule that's pretty consistent day to day, right? But you're not going to freak out if one day is different,
Right.
or if you have an off day, or you travel to grandma's house and things look different. That's okay. You
Yeah.
can't, if you're so rigid that derails you, you're just setting yourself up to be in a bad mental space. So if we just kind of go into it with that attitude, then I can give them a list, which they like to receive, like something that they can look to be like, what can I be doing? Things you can be thinking about to set your baby up for success when they approach sleep, as they keep developing through those first 3 months and are waking up to the world. So first being making sure that you're giving them full feeds throughout the day.
I cannot stress this enough. Like, we love a
Yes.
happy babies after they ate always, right? But a snacking
Yes.
baby makes for a tired parent.
Right. And like, so just kind of like, I think Jane, who is the founder of Center for Pediatric Sleep Management, where we were both certified through, I think one of her lines that she used was tank them up. Like, tank them up during the day. Make
Yeah.
sure that you are just paying attention to when they're feeding, that they're really taking in a full feed and really making that feed go as long as it can. So just make it go a long way, right? Because then it does two things. One, it assures you and gives you the peace of mind that they're satiated. They're not like crying out of hunger. They just had a full feed, right?
Right.
And two, it helps them, like they are satiated, so they're ready to approach sleep instead of being hungry and like confused and not, if it's like the hierarchy of needs. If they're not
Literally.
satisfied with their hunger, they're not going to be able to soothe and go to sleep.
Right. And
So
that's so huge. I think that it's the idea that they need to be full. And it's also stressful to start because, one, if you're breastfeeding, sometimes you do or you don't know how much they're eating. So following their hunger cues is really the way you have to go with it. And if you are
right.
bottle feeding, especially if you're a first time parent, you almost don't even know what to do and how much to give them. So, like, for my postpartum clients, and also you guys can head over to my Etsy and download it. I have like a sleep and feeding window like template that I made. And again, I say take it with an absolute grain of salt, obviously, because you're following
Mhm.
baby's cues, but it's something to look at to go, okay, am I giving my baby half an ounce of milk, or am I giving them 2.5 ounces of milk based off of how, their weight is and how old they are? Because you
Yeah.
don't know sometimes, but then being able to recognize the things like the clenched fists should be relaxed if they're full, or they should seem kind of like floppy, and then they're pretty full.
Yes.
Those types of things are
Yes.
such good indicators that they're getting a good solid meal. And even from the start, baby should be going at least about 3 hours between feeds. Some breast milk babies go closer to 2 to start. But
Yeah.
even during the day, like when you were saying, fill their tank, right? Especially
Mhm.
during the day. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
all I say is, eat, get those calories in during the day so that at night, once your PD lets you know that they can sleep longer, they're going to start doing that 5 hour stretch right away. Rather
Yes.
than, just still getting up every 2.5 to 3 hours. If you can get those calories in during the day, your nighttime will thank you.
Right, right. And sleep shaping is all about like habit and habit forming, right? Like it's really
Right.
easy to form habits with your baby, like for you and the baby, because you're basically, let's be real, their habits are your habits. Like the way
Yeah.
that their day runs is how your day runs. So if you can just start out by being super intentional about that, and just the first one we're mentioning is feeding, but all the other points we'll make too is just like it's almost like mindfulness, like just kind of taking a second to notice like what is working here. What did
Right.
I do to make this outcome, this desired outcome, sleep happen? And that's one of them. That's definitely one of them for
Yeah.
sure.
And whatever you do one day may not happen the next day. And even if you do everything exactly the same one day, the next day the baby's not going to react the same way when you do it the same way. Because
Yeah.
we're not robots, like you said at the beginning. Like we can't
Yeah.
be and expect baby to be so rigid and, react the same way every time.
Yes. This is not about rigidity. This is about just being aware of the positive, like I guess, interventions you can
Yeah.
make at the beginning. And they're not always great, but if you just consistently make them every day, you know that to overall, like if you're looking at the first 3 months, you will have set them up super well.
Right.
So not beating yourself up, but being consistent with those,
Yeah.
with these methods is for me personally for my clients has been the recipe for success.
And it's so true to be aligned with the idea that, you're not only setting these routines and these like consistency up for, your baby, but you're also doing it for you. So it gives you something to like be knowing it's going to happen. Like you have an
Yeah.
expectation for yourself, right? Like if you're going to
Yeah.
do, which I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, but like if you're going to do a bedtime routine every single night, not only is your baby now going to have a sleep cue, but you now know what your night's going to look like starting at 6 or 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And, I'm excited. I'm going to have an OT on in a couple weeks. Next week, actually,
Oh,
maybe a week after.
nice.
And we're going to talk literally about how sleep and routine can be connected like this. So stay tuned for that episode.
Yes.
But we're going to keep going because I'm
It's very
totally
true.
tangenting.
No, that's good. I guess since you just mentioned it, we could kind of go into bedtime routines
Yeah.
too. Like if so yeah, so you're taking your child up all day and you might not think it, but even a little newborn can recognize cues and routines. And especially if you're doing it right from the start. That's all that they'll know.
Right.
So it's so helpful for our kids, like when we're setting boundaries with them, to help them the best we can to be actually able to meet those, right? So if we're saying it's bedtime, like helping them to recognize it and ease into that with cues is huge. So like there's no right way to do it, like whatever works good for you. So if you want to give your baby a little sponge bath, or you don't have to go full on bath every night, but just something like that, and you do lotion and you put them in their pajamas, their room is dim lighting, and you want to read a little board book to them or something, and depending upon, even if you are, you have them right in your room with you at the beginning, like in the bassinet, just really differentiating the nighttime, like dim, low lighting, calm space with like daytime sleeping spaces. So if like they're downstairs sleeping in, a mamaroo or something, like you could be around the house, like emptying the dishwasher and being loud so that like you don't have to like whisper and be quiet all day, so that they kind of get used to being like, this is daytime and then this is the calm nighttime routine.
Right. Exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
do see, I'll say, a lot of people I notice with postpartum stuff too will reach out around like 6 weeks ish, give or take, because there is such a huge awareness of the world that happens at that point where baby recognizes the fact that they're not in utero anymore, and
Yeah.
sometimes they at that point have a hard time, right? So prior to that, I agree, right? I totally tell everybody, I'm like, make it loud, make it bright during the day. And then at night, we obviously want to try to set that up. Once it gets to that 6 week mark, I find some babies have a hard time sleeping when it's loud and bright because they now are so aware, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a hard time sleeping because they want to keep up, right? Like they want to look at everything that's around them. They hear
Mm-hmm.
things, they can't fall asleep. So I always say, first try that. But if they're having a hard time falling asleep, they now know that dark and quiet and in wherever they sleep at night is where they sleep. And so then that is set up for if you are trying to get them to take a nap and now they're just overtired, that if you
Mm-hmm.
go up to that sleep space and you dim the lights and you put the
Mm-hmm.
sound machine on and you swaddle them, that by the time they get into that crib or bassinet or sleep space, they're going to be out cold, right? Because they
Yeah.
now know that this is bed.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing
Yeah.
to set up from the start. And I can't even, yeah, so true.
Yeah. And it helps you too, because you don't want to feel like you're like, walking on eggshells all day, like while your baby's sleeping downstairs. So like that,
Right.
it's just kind of like, it's a good mental space to be in. And it just kind of sets you and the baby up for like those shifts throughout the day.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So we talk about, bedtime routines and all of that. We've talked about kind of calorie intake and getting those full feeds in.
Yes.
What other tips do you have that you can give to the listeners? Maybe like one or two more if you have them,
Sure. Sure.
that you
Sure. Sure.
typically give.
So definitely plenty of time, and especially like during the time that is daytime for you. So like you wouldn't want to do this like, when you're trying to put them down, especially in the summer when it stays up light out so late, but like just getting baby outside and exposed to natural light and fresh air
Oh, so
is,
good.
yeah, it's good for everyone, right? So, and even like, if they doze a little bit in their stroller, that's okay, but just getting them outside is great. It's a great way to stimulate them. So like baby, especially like new babies, are their main form of learning is just through their eyes and just kind of looking at the leaves on the trees as you're walking them in the stroller, and they're like looking up at the
Right.
trees above them, and really like taking in all of that visual stimuli. It tires their little brains out.
Oh my gosh, they
So
zonk out. And why not? Because I mean, not only is it good
yes.
for them, but like you get a bit of normalcy too after being stuck inside. Like nobody's really going anywhere for especially those first few weeks, that like getting outside once a day can really be that reset that people
Yeah.
need. Like that's one of my tips for when you have a fussy baby is go outside or give them a bath because it'll calm down one of you, if not both.
Yeah. No, no, it's absolutely true. Yeah, so that would be another one, but that's a pretty big one. And then and lastly, and there are so many little things you can do. Like this is by no means an exhaustive list.
Of
These are
course
just the
not.
ones that
We could go on
really
for
seem to work.
literally
Yeah.
hours.
There are so many little tips and tricks you can do, but like at the end of the day, it just comes down to like being intentional and being consistent with
Yeah,
these things, and not being discouraged if you have one bad day and think like, oh, that this, none of that really matters. That
right.
obviously it really does, like, and before you know it, 3 months will have gone by and you're like, oh, like, yeah, I guess that did have some sort of effect.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I guess my other tip too is more of like an assist to help you to be able to meet these other tips is just like really trying to line up a support person, like a partner or a family member, a friend or a doula to hand the baby off to help you to be able to meet these goals. So
Right.
it's really a lot to put on one person to try to meet the needs of a baby and kind of try to keep them on that routine from the start. Like it's like you kind of have to be on all the time. And that's
Yeah.
it's just kind of it's setting yourself up for I don't want to say the word failure, but it's like setting yourself
You're
up to
setting
just
your
be stressed.
Yeah, it's setting yourself up for stress and a lack of patience. I mean, I said in one
Yes.
of the previous episodes with one of my postpartum clients, she came on to tell her birth and postpartum story. And when we were talking about some of these types of things, I literally said to her, I was like, it's kind of like you're in an unhealthy relationship with your newborn because you are giving so much to this tiny little alien and they don't give
Yeah.
anything back besides a poopy diaper and screaming in your face because they're hungry and then screaming because they're overtired and refuse to listen to you when you say,
Right.
right? Like
They're
they
pretty
don't
abusive.
get anything. Yeah. And then it takes a
Yeah.
long time for them to start clicking to even like coo or smile or laugh. And then even
Yeah.
farther along for that to be purposeful and not just like instinctual. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is for that first bit of time, like if you're doing it all solo, it is exhausting and
Yeah.
it's takes all the patience and all the energy out and it's not fair. It's not you're not going to see the success that you want to see if you're trying to do this alone. And if you
No.
are alone, I say put baby in a safe space, walk away, close the door, put some earplugs in, give yourself a minute. I will
Yes.
say even when I work sometimes on night shifts and I have really fussy babies, I'll put one AirPod in and I'll play some like Jack Johnson or like something chill
Yes.
and just sit there and shush rocking baby because it muffles the sound enough that I can still hear them. I still know they're okay. I hear they're crying. I can tell when they're calming, but it also
Yeah.
calms me and grounds me. So like sometimes you need
Absolutely. Yeah.
that.
I like to just tell people like you have like baby monitors are great, right? But almost like try to lay off the monitor a little bit. Like if
Yes.
you've met all these needs throughout the day, you've been super intentional about sleep shaping techniques. You know that you're really setting them up. They're safe, they're warm, they're fed. The last thing you need to do is to have your stress levels rise to where it's like palpable for the
Yeah.
baby.
Right.
So like, and it totally is. So
Yeah.
definitely like lay off the monitor, put on a podcast, go outside, just hand the monitor off to your partner. Take some time because it will do mere wonders for you and then by extension for your baby.
Right. And I wanted to tangent on that because that's so true. And nowadays, all these monitors, some of them have like, the actual like monitor itself, but a lot of them connect to your phone. Like Nanit, I know is specifically
Yes.
on your phone, but I not know a lot of companies do both now, which I think is great. But
Yeah.
also like if you are the kind of person like me personally, I am so type A that like as a parent, I know that I would have these alarms set on my phone and anytime it would go off, I'd like check on baby and I'd be like super anxiety provoked. I'd constantly be checking my phone. Like if you're that kind of person, like recognize that, know that, and then turn the stupid notifications
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, you just kind of like the thought just popped in my mind just by what you were saying, like recognizing like what kind of person you are. Sleep shaping for a newborn is like just as much sleep shaping for them as it is for you as a parent. Like
Right.
this is your time where you are establishing the relationship you're going to have with sleep and your how you feel about it with your child. So
Right.
it's extremely important to just kind of have those healthy coping mechanisms and healthy thought processes about sleep installed right at the beginning. I think it's just as important to think of it as it for them as it is for you.
Right. And I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing that I just want to touch upon as we're wrapping up kind of here is with sleep shaping, I think that so many people think that it has just to do with sleep. And that's simply not the case. Like it is
Mm-mm.
about their day and their routine and how you're setting them up for success. It's not about like as tiny newborns, they don't have the ability to self-soothe, right? So we're not putting our baby down in their crib and walking away for 30 minutes to let them self-soothe and fall asleep. Yeah, you can put them down and if they become upset, maybe you try tapping them or you give them a pacifier or you shush them when they're in the crib before picking them up to give them the opportunity to assist them in self-soothing, but they are not able to fully self-soothe, and that's okay, and that's normal. And like,
Yep.
we're not telling you to put your baby somewhere and let them figure it out on their own, right? Like,
No.
that's why we wait till they're 3 months old and we get okay from pediatricians to, have them extend their sleep stretches. We know that their circadian rhythm is set. They're able to
Yes.
be more aware. Like, prior to this, we're setting up cornerstones in more ways than just bedtime, right? Like, and I think that's a huge misconception of sleep shaping versus sleep training that I wanted to make sure we kind of get out there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just very important to like, yeah, if you sleep shaping is something that is important to you and you want to instill it, you do it on how it feels right for you. So if
Right.
you want to instill these methods but then you have one day where you like go and, meet your friend downtown for coffee and you want to kind of like lay off that for a day, it's okay. But as
Right.
long as you come back to that baseline that you're instilling all together, strung together, it's effective. But
Yes.
it's
You just have to
nothing to
stay
make yourself
consistent.
crazy. Yeah.
No, no,
It's to
exactly.
help
And
you.
just goes,
It's to
it
help.
goes right back to that flexibility we were talking about, right? I think it's so true.
Yes. Yep.
It's so true.
That's the theme of raising kids in general. But
Oh, there's so much
with
gray
newborns,
area.
it starts right from the beginning, as soon as you bring them home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been asking on most of my guests this before we close out, but if you
Okay.
could give one piece of advice and like one product recommendation to a new parent, like what would you
Sure.
tell them and what would you suggest as like a sleep consultant, I guess, if you wanted to
Yeah.
go that route? I know you've, worked with children, so you can kind of give whatever,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Piece of advice I would say is so people are going to want to support you and give you their opinions, and they want to, for the most of the cases, are doing it to be helpful for you. But just remember that everybody filters their own opinion through their own lens of their own experience, and there is nothing besides, like I said before, safety for a baby that is absolute. So if there's something that somebody is telling you to do, but it's not feeling right for you or it's causing you undue stress, disregard it. There are no shoulds. It's just what's going to work best for you, because ultimately that is what's going to make you the best parent you can be.
oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and
Yeah.
then is there a product that you absolutely love, especially for like baby newborn sleep? Is there like
Yes.
something that you're like, get this?
Yeah. I like the Halo sleep sacks.
Yep.
So they're the ones that a lot of hospitals actually send home with you or use and then end
Yes.
up sending home with you. And they come in all different sizes. They come in all different materials. You can get them in like fleecy materials for like colder months. But they're really nice because they have like the zipper like sack portion of it, and then the Velcro for like wrapping their little arms in is like a really nice material. It's a great length. It's really easy to use. And
Yes.
then it's easy to start like a whole nother sleep training hot topic. It's easy to start transitioning them out of that as soon as they're
Yes.
starting to roll. So yeah, I love all Halo brands. And then you can even get like big sleep sacks for like your 18-month-old if you still want to use them then. So it's
Right.
great.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally, I've written down 4 different new podcast topics as we've been going, and one of them being
Oh,
swaddle
good.
transitioning. So, like, I
Yeah.
love this.
Yeah.
But yes, I do. I
Yep.
love the Halo slap ones. I mean, I really think it depends on the kid, but when you go from having their arms in from like a muslin swaddle or something like that to an actual transitional swaddle, I love them, right? You can have their arms in, you can do one arm out, you can do two arm out. They switch right into that line has the sleep sacks versus the sleep swaddle, what like Velcro swaddle ones. So no, I
Yes.
totally agree. Great one.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share with listeners today that you are, doing that people should keep an eye out for? Or if not, do you want to kind of share where people can find you? I know I'll put it in the notes, but feel free to share it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Sound Sleepers by Natalie Fay. And for booking appointments, it'll take you right to my website. Otherwise, I also have a website, which is www.soundsleepers.nataliefay.com. And then I also have, we have a website and socials for 9 in 9 out. So it's 9 in 9 out on Instagram. And it's the numeral 9, not the word 9.
Okay.
And then a website 9in and 9out.com. So yeah, if you think that you have a need or a market for it in your area and you want to talk to us about it, we are in our building phases, and we would love to we love having conversations with different postpartum professionals and kind of figuring out like, how can we get this kind of event available to more people. So
yeah, I mean, I know a lot of my listeners are in the like New Englandy area. So for those of you that are listening, if you would love a, pregnancy perinatal expo with, more services than stuff, as I like to say, let me know, because oh my gosh, I would totally love to do it. I think it would be such a blast, and plus I'd get to see you more, so it'd be good.
Really, we're open to it. So yeah, any of those channels, and yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If anyone is interested in chatting with Natalie, like I said, I will throw some information in the show notes below. But also, if you have any other questions or topic ideas for the podcast, like I just did during this and wrote down 4 different ones, feel free to let me know on Instagram, and I'll see you guys next week.
Great.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Postpartum Plan podcast. I hope that today's episode brought you support, relatability, and valuable insight. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review and share with any of your prenatal and postpartum friends and family. Your feedback helps us reach more parents seeking support. And if you're looking for additional resources, please feel free to connect via Instagram at Serene Moments Doula for constant information, tips, and tricks, or check out my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com. See you next week.